Have you seen this? Oh, you did? The Stephen Dorff vehicle about Gen X cynicism? So fucking what?
Welcome to Have You Seen This?
The world's only podcast about obscure, overlooked, and misbegotten media.
All discussions will be spoiler heavy.
You have been warned.
Maybe Brian disagrees, but Brian, do you want to tell us what we watched for this episode?
So this is a movie that this was not the first time I've seen it, but the first time I saw it had to be in the 90s when I was in high school. It's called S.F.W. It stands for So Fucking What. And it was like for a kid from Ohio that was a teenager. These were like the movies that I liked. It kind of was riding a post Dazed and Confused wave of just people wanting to see young people doing cool stuff. And I know I saw it. I didn't remember almost anything from it when I went to watch it. And I am fascinated kind of myself just thinking about what a teenage me must have thought about this movie.
Yeah.
Do you have any recollection?
I don't think so. No, it's really weird. Like, I know I've seen this a couple times, but I also was an incredibly, like, I was very stupid. Like, I didn't think I would have thought that the main guy in this movie, Cliff Spab, I would have thought he was cool back then, you know, but also I wouldn't have thought, like, I wouldn't have known what made him cool. And when you watch it as you're older, you realize, like, oh, this is just like some young person who thinks they're a genius philosopher, you know? And I'm talking about the writer, by the way, not the main guy in the movie. I feel like a movie like this. Yeah, I feel like a movie like this is like the writer and director of the movie are just telling you how fucking philosophical they are and stuff. So
you may be onto something there. This was co-written and directed by a guy named Jeffrey Levy. Motherfucker can't even spell Jeffrey right.
Yeah, how do you expect him to write a screenplay? I mean,
he wrote it with his own crayon. He has since gone on to work, I believe, mainly in television. He does have a few more features, but literally nothing of note.
Right.
I like slacker stuff back then. That was, you know, the other movie I was going to suggest is, I think, Out of Your Wheelhouse, I think. But it was a very important movie to a young teen me that couldn't understand what was happening, and it was Singles by Cameron Crowe.
Right.
Yeah, we don't discuss good movies on this podcast. Sorry.
I saw that movie 1,000 times when I was 15. And that's another one where it's like, what did a 15-year-old, what was he doing? Like, watching a movie about like 30-year-old people having 30-year-old problems. You know?
It's just preparing you for the drab, miserable landscape that is your 30s, man.
Dude, so fucking true.
Right. Hey, so fucking what?
And I think that
cool
in with tonight's lineup, we may have a case of nerds versus, I don't want to say burnouts. That's unkind. But,
Jen, I don't think of you as a burnout.
Oh, I burned out a long time ago, Tim. Now, Tim and I kind of grew up as nerdy kids who were reasonably well behaved.
And then things took a weird turn, and we started doing a podcast talking about movies.
You know, we were reasonably well behaved, like a couple of little hiccups on Tim's part aside. Commendably, he had a definite anti-authoritarian bent from a young age. It took me a while to learn that. But Brian, I know you've talked about it on Street Fight, but can you give the audience a picture of the teenage Brian, the kind of guy who would have watched this movie? Like, were you like Tobey Maguire and that other guy in that one scene, or?
If I could, the people I hung out with were a lot like Jake Busey in this movie, like just kind of like redneck, like just really like redneck white trash guys that were like smooth talking. Because I thought, guys like that, I just was like, yeah, and always in a catastrophe. So like, I would have had to have been. I would have had to have at least been 16. I wore a lot of Jinko jeans. I listened to Korn and Limp Bizkit and stuff like that. And I really think, and I'm from Groveport, Ohio. It's kind of it's not rural, but it's also like not the city. It's suburban, but half of the school district is actually. Half of the school district is actually like a rural area. So I live in a little suburb, and then we meet up in high school with people that grew up like on farms and shit. And I just saw people like this as being like really cool, really sophisticated. And I think that's kind of what I would have thought about Cliff Spab. I would have thought he was like a cool, because I always wanted to live in New York City when I was a kid. And I would have thought he was like a cool kind of New York type of philosophy guy. And which is embarrassing to say now after watching it and being like, oh, okay. He seems like the fucking worst guy in the room at a party.
Hey, you can't listen to this. If you want to hear the rest of this episode, you got to head on over to patreon.com/haveyouseenthis. And for only $5 a month, you'll get the rest of this episode, plus one more every month, plus over 50 other patron-only episodes. Find the deep cuts for only $5 a month at patreon.com/haveyouseenthis. Link is in the description.